Oh, first of all, I'm just happy that college football is back. It is. I love pro football. I love football in any form. I love high school football. I recently watched 7, 8, 9-year-olds play football about a week ago. I watch football in any way, shape, or form. Flag, tackle, touch, you name it. I watched The Office. When they had their inter-office football game. I watch anything that's football related. But for me, the combination of like polish and talent level that you still get at the highest levels, or even any level of college football, combined with you still have at least some sense of the love of the game still animating most of it, makes college football my personal favorite type of college football, type of football to watch. And thus far, college football has not disappointed us. There have been so many great games already, and more to come. We'll be joined momentarily by our guest, and of course, that is the wonderful Demetrius Vrges at the Cornbread and Kool-Aid Codcast, which is at Cornbread Pod on Twitter, aka X. I'll remember to call it X someday. But we're going to talk about the Big Ten, Michigan State particularly, and also the current state of the quote unquote super conference, right? I've had to adjust to the Pac 8 becoming the Pac 10 and then the Pac 12 and then the Pac 2. So a lot has happened. A lot has happened. I've watched the Southwestern Conference come and go. I've watched the Big 8 become the Big 12 and now the Big 17 or 16 or whatever it is. The big, when I sort of joke about the Big 10 being the big infinity. The ACC has gained and lost members over the years. But the common occurrence, the common thread, of course, is television contracts and money. And who doesn't love talking about television contracts and money? Well, I don't, quite frankly. But you can't not discuss it, I guess is sort of the way you put it. It's one of the things that you cannot avoid at some point having to deal with. And the ACC is in a rather odd position. Everyone needs to grow or die seems to be the current posture. And so now, if you're Memphis, if you're, some of those schools that have not yet been quote unquote gobbled up by one of the Power 4.2, they're, you're getting you up text, right? I joked around when we had our friend Alex Brown, who at that time was with Southern Miss, now at Ole Miss, SMU, which is Southern Methodist, now at Ole Miss, about the fact that I knew that the higher ups within the Southern Methodist administration must be getting basically, like I said, you up text from, well, I was talking about the Big 12 at the time, but obviously the ACC swooped in and other conferences have swooped in and gotten teams that usually would be outside of their sort of cultural and geographical footprint. And geographical and cultural footprint are, I won't say meaningless nowadays, but they certainly mean less than they did. It just means less, right? Where you are, who you play, what everyone's used to thinking of when they think of your program have all changed and changed quite dramatically in the last few years. And whether we like it or not, and there are, once again, advantages and disadvantages. We're going to get to see some amazing games this week and the weeks after that and the weeks after that. But to get to the Michigan State Spartans, I've always had a bit of a soft spot. One, because they were one of the programs that fairly aggressively, even as early as just after World War II, was aggressively recruiting Black players. Of course, they weren't the only ones, but they very aggressively recruited Black players to play for them in the Big Ten and let them even sometimes play positions outside of the edges, right, of offense and defense. They would have guards and centers and middle linebackers and eventually even quarterbacks playing for them fairly early on in the evolution of predominantly white institutions, recruiting and playing Black players at the quote unquote thinking man positions. But Michigan State finds itself at a crossroads. And when Demetrius joins us, I will ask him about how he feels about the current state of the program. But Michigan State is finding its way once more. I'll be honest. I was one of those people that was all in on the Mel Tucker hire. And I think Mel Tucker, if not for a variety of self-inflicted wounds, was on his way to an absolutely great career as a head coach at the collegiate level. And perhaps even beyond that. He obviously had, a fair amount of pro connections and experience as well. But to just briefly touch upon Mel Tucker, I don't want to the point is that he did things, unconscionable things that brought down his administration as a head football coach, despite his talents, despite what he was as a recruiter and other things that you want to talk about. They now have Jonathan Smith in place, who I think, first of all, is a solid human being, which is one of the things we wanted to make sure of. They have the Terrapins, and they're going to Maryland. Then they have Prairie View, which HBCU. I always glad to see HBCUs get a chance to play up. And then Boston College, the dangerous Boston College, they have on the 21st. So that's the next few games they have. And Maryland is not an easy out. It has not been a team. They get somebody every year, right? They may not be a team that people think of as a truly dangerous program yet, at least, but they're located in, obviously ACC country. They recruit I grew up in the Virginia Beach area, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, in the Tidewater, 757. That is an area that Maryland has effectively recruited for many years. And obviously Michigan State, and I've just been joined by our host. So I will add him to the show. By our guest, sorry, not him to the show. But they are dealing with a recruiting footprint that is not a traditional Big Ten recruiting footprint. Penn State was the only other Big Ten school that really traditionally and for an established period of time has recruited the Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina area until Maryland joined the conference. You had Penn State really mining that area. But you don't want to hear me jibber jabber about Maryland's recruiting footprint when we've got your friend in mind, and most importantly, our man established in the hearts and minds of everyone who loves the Spartan Legion of Michigan State. How are we doing, Mr. Demetrius Vrges?
Hey, Bill, how are you today? Good to be here.
Good to be here with you. I was going to ask you about how you felt about the current state of the Michigan State program, talk a little about Maryland's, the challenges they present, and then touch on sort of the conference, this metastasized version of the conference. But I'll start with this particular game. At one point, this was a game that I was super excited about, a couple of years ago, because the Big Ten was going to be bringing more and more, up and coming Black head coaches. And now Mike Locksley is the third longest tenured. A lot has happened in the last couple of years in the Big Ten.
Right.
Locksley went from being a new coach to now the third longest tenured coach in the conference. But take me through this game and the state of the Michigan State program.
So right now, obviously, a lot with the program is in flux/transition, right? We bring in Jonathan Smith over from Oregon State. He brings over 60 new players. So you can imagine, right? You can imagine with a team that knew to each other.
Deion Sanders.
Exactly. At 60 new players, but he brought over a quarterback that we like. He brought over a lineman to help us revamp a line. But today is going to be a difficult game, I'll be honest. Right? We struggled a little bit against Florida Atlantic last week. Maryland's secondary presents challenges. The biggest thing to a quarterback who looked like a young quarterback getting his first real taste, right? So today you're looking for growth. If you're a Michigan State person, you're not looking for a shocker. I think they have the potential to do it, but the simple truth about Michigan State today and all year is as Aiden Childs goes, so goes the Spartans football team. I think there's guys at other positions, solid tight end at Velling with Velling, but I think that this is a transition year. This is a year of growth for the football program, and this is the year where 2 years from now you're going to look back and say, hey, they made some really good strides. Today, in particular, is a really good battle. So what I want to see is guys performing. I want to see Childs make good football decisions. There's throws and there's decisions. You want to see that. I like to see Nate Carter be established as a Michigan State running back. 4, 5, 7 yards a carry and just keep pounding. You'll get big plays. I'd like to see Montorie Foster have a couple of touchdown catches, right? So some of those things, but it's really a bunch of transfers starting to understand the system. And Maryland's a good challenge, and Loxley's I like him as a coach for obvious reasons that you and I agree on. But I think the Maryland football team is always prepared. They don't not show up, win or lose. They show up. So I think it'll be a good game, a good test for a young, new in every sense of the word, Michigan State program, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. It is in almost every way except the. I guess and even some of the uniforms, I guess, are new. I think they busted out some new unis. So I guess the name, location has stayed the same.
And the color, but it's still green.
Yeah. Colors, name, location stayed the same. But you're right. It is a very many ways a new program. I remember half losing my mind when on the 2 deep at Colorado a couple years ago, 39 of 44 on the 2 deep were new players, right? And I thought, well, I'll never see that again. Well.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, welcome to 2024 and the new college football. I don't know if it's that on the 2 deep. It's probably a little less, but
slightly less. Yeah.
Still same. But I think, just understanding where we are. This is the first year of Jonathan Smith. We feel comfortable about what we're going to be, but we know what we are right now. I mean, I think that's a good thing to say.
And that brings me to my next sort of slide-in question. So you said success means progress. Now, and I agree with you, but people like numbers. So, so if someone said you'll be happy with a season that ends with a record of what are you looking for in terms of that as you measure the progress?
Yeah. So you talked about numbers, and numbers are important. I think my answer would be a bowl game, right? Ooh. For the obvious reason, you get 10, 12, 15 more practices. That's what's actually important. More so than the number. My answer to your question is 7 and 5. That'd be great. But we have to be honest again about, who we are. So I think my short answer to your question, but you got a manageable enough schedule, right? You focus on some of the key personnel losses from last year and know who you are. 7 and 6, I think I said 7 and 5. So hopefully 7 and 6, right? But you bring over a solid center and Tanner Miller from Oregon State, along with the coach. A guard from Illinois, Andrew Dennis, will help on the offensive line. So I'm dancing around the answer because it's much more about growth. The real answer to this question is not a number. It is bowl eligibility to get those extra practices. It is improved running game. It is established, like I said, guys like Montorie Foster and a young guy named Marsh, who you're going to learn about Marsh if you don't already know. You will. And I need to see Aiden Childs be a better quarterback in game 8 than he was in game 1. But my answer to your question is 7 and 5, 7 to 6. Sorry.
I appreciate it. Felt very much like one of those debate answers from a political debate.
I know who I'm talking to. You didn't want me to just say it. You require depth. I know you well enough to know what you were looking for.
I'm so glad you asked me that. And here are my established talking points.
Here are my 7 points that I've thought about.
I agree with you about a lot of those. Aiden Childs is fascinating to me because you said you used the term Michigan State running back. And you have a quarterback that does not feel like a Michigan State quarterback. Would that be fair to say?
That is very fair.
And I'm fascinated by, of course, it's a different offense from anything you've ever run at Michigan State also, but I'm fascinated by his fit in, when I'm old enough, you're old enough to remember when Michigan State football meant we threw the ball when it was advantageous, like everybody's crowding the line, that kind of thing. Or if we're down by 2 scores and it's late, right? That was the times like there was times when it's we have a great look, or we're behind by a couple scores late. That was when Michigan State threw the ball more than a sprinkle, basically.
Right. When Lorenzo White was tired, when Kenneth Walker was tired, when TJ Duckett was tired. That's
exactly. Give him a blow. Right, exactly. We'll throw the ball to a tight end. Give him a blow. Exactly. Michigan State football for a long time meant a Michigan State running back, a Michigan State quarterback who avoided mistakes, a Michigan State offensive line that leaned on you and, had at least 1 or 2 definite pro prospects. And then a Michigan State defense that had tough guys in the interior, fast-ish to fast guys on the exterior, and at least one guy who was going to light you up somewhere in the middle of the linebacker core. At least one true slobber knocker hitter. That from the early 1970s when I started watching Big Ten football until very recently. Now I look at a team where the linebackers are basically guys who would have been defensive backs not that long ago in some cases. I don't know who your pass rusher is, who the one who will be the pass rusher is, and you may know. But I'm excited to see this game. Maybe I'll see that person emerge. So let's talk about the defensive side of the ball, because that's what I used to. Michigan State's mentality and identity, branding statement was we're going to play defense no matter what happens, and then the offense will come around. Yeah. So take me through the defense and who should I be looking for?
Yeah, so up front, I'm going to talk a lot about transfers, right? Because I talked about all the new players. I think Jordan Turner comes over from Wisconsin at linebacker, and he's going to make plays. Wayne Matthews, who came over from ODU, is a tackling machine.
Yes,
and I like both of those guys. But our guy who still fits in the throwback mode is still Cal Haladay, right? That's the guy. He's the leading tackler. He's the name you're going to hear the most. Those are the guys you're going to know. I think on the outside, a kid from Middle Tennessee State we brought over named Dunnigan. You're going to hear about like him on the outside, and another kid from Georgia State. Like I said, there's a lot of transfers. Dowse from Georgia Tech, and the kid from Oregon, Ben Roberts. They're gonna help overcome some key losses. The secondary, though, is still kind of homegrown. We lost Jaden Mangum, our top safety. That hurts because he was a coach back there. He was solid. But second leading tackler is Malik Spencer, who will be back, and he will be important. He'll play a lot of nickel, but he'll be kind of all over, right? And Dylan Tatum's a nice safety. So on all three levels, I think there is this. And here's the theme. It's going to be the theme the whole show. Transfers, right? New people who are going to come in and make an impact, but there's still enough guys who are around. There's a transfer from Arizona State, Ed Woods, that I also like. He will probably step in and start right away. So there's going to be a mix of that. Haladay, some holdovers that give you some depth and a way we play football at Michigan State. But there were key losses. And we had to overcome the graduation type losses and transfers. We lost a lot, but we brought in a lot. Like I said, these new players and guys like Dunnigan and Dowse and Roberts will help. A guy like Malik Spencer who will play kind of all over the back there. And like I said, I like Tatum, really like Woods. So new names sprinkled in with your Cal Holidays in terms of like getting after the passer. I don't know who the guy is going to lead us in sacks yet, and I'm okay with that. I mean, I think it's cool to kind of figure it out and see that blossom and develop. But the theme at every level of the defense is new guys coming in and filling holes. And again, we know who we are. We know what that is. But those are some of the names I think you're going to hear, especially in the secondary. Cal Haladay is still the guy. If you tell me one guy, who's the guy? It's Cal Haladay. That's still the guy.
Got it. Okay. Now let's sort of talk about the big solve for X, the number, whatever the number is now. It is a conference that still sort of has its root and its heart to some extent in the Midwest, but is truly a nationwide conference.
What are we going to call it, Bill? You and I should come up with a name. We talk enough.
We really should. The big. Yeah, I mean, it's the big conglomerate conference to me, basically, at this point. But
I love it.
It is. That's what I think of it as.
It'll be Big 20 soon. So it's at some point those other two holdouts have to make the phone call, right?
It's going to be interesting to see how they finally work some of these things out. Yeah. I'll do a whole other show on at some point on like the future of college football, which is fascinating stuff. But we're looking now. And you and I individually and football fans as a whole at the age of the super conference, and it's not going anywhere. You don't have to like it. I don't, but it's not going anywhere. So I'm going to have to adapt.
You can be mad,
but I'm going to have to adapt. One, do you think this hurts or helps a program that is thought of as a second tier? Hopefully you don't take offense to that, but thought of as a second tier team in the conference. Does the conference becoming bigger help or hurt, do you think, the teams that aren't the first two names that immediately come to mind? And then secondarily, do you think it's done, or do you think that this will keep amoebaizing, swallowing up more programs?
Yeah. So I'm going to do the second one first because I love it when people do that. I'll
Okay.
answer the second part first. I think those other two, the Pac-2, have to come around, and eventually 20 is a round number, but it also makes sense in a lot of ways. You
Right.
can split the conference up geographically more fluidly. I think that at that point, you can start to see what's happening. And I use this simple analysis of college football is becoming the NFL. Really, the SEC called them the AFC. Let's call the Big 20 the NFC. That's what you're going to be. You're going to have the 12-team playoff, and they'll leave space for 3 or 4 teams. But you may even have a different answer than me. I'm not shocked this season if 8 of the 12 are from 2 conferences. I don't know if I'm shocked if 10 of them, depending on what Notre Dame does, right? Right. That's what you got. You have an AFC and an NFC, and that's where we're going. And so that's where I see it growing to. It's just 20 is too. There's too much logic behind 20 versus 18 to not do it. And they're sitting there, and they can restore their historic rivalries and do everything like that. So I think you get the Pac-2 to come around, and you become the Big 20. You're the NFC. The SEC will be the AFC, and that's what it'll be. And it may be unfortunate. I don't know. To the first part, my school. The tricky answer, because I'm not ever going to be easy, is both. It helps and hurts. It hurts because we got to play Oregon, right? So it hurts there, but it helps, I think, far more, particularly for us where we are along the journey. I think that you can recruit more because Jonathan Smith has been in some of those living rooms. So the key there, he can recruit out west, and I think that. Money, right? We talk about it all the time. You have a number of great sayings around following the money. The money is bigger. They signed their TV deal, I want to say 2 years ago, maybe in 22. That's going to get bigger because you brought in marquee games now. Now you've got Michigan and Oregon. You've got Ohio State and Oregon. You got these marquee games, and USC is still a draw regardless of what they look like on the field. Washington is no slouch. You have games now, like marquee games. So your TV deal is going to go up. They're going to split that money. You're going to get more money, which helps your program and your university as a whole. It will help in recruiting because players want to play in big games. Players want to be on TV. These things are not just figments. They are a big part of it. So I think it both help and hurts. For us specifically, it will allow us a larger canvas to recruit. And that's at the end of the day, but everybody else gets that same larger canvas, right? So I think it helps and hurts. For the conference, it's great. I'm not a old school, stuck in the mud, traditional. In baseball, I am, but in college football, I am not, right? So I think it's great for the conference. I think ultimately it'll be very good for Michigan State. But currently, we got to take some L's. We're going to take L from Oregon this year, and it might not be pretty. But I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you brought up something very important because unlocking the West Coast, while it will be a real pain in the butt for you, like your track and field, your tennis, your wrestlers, your gymnast, going back and forth from a meet or a tournament, and then here's your organic chemistry exam at 8:00 in the morning the next day after you got on a flight at 11:00 at night Pacific time to fly back to the Midwest. Or God help you, you're at Penn State. Ugh. But but
that red eye from LAX is not fun.
Yeah, no delays. But unlocking the West Coast, even getting the third best kid at wide receiver from some high school in the Los Angeles area still is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Texas has been available to pretty much everybody for a long time. Everybody recruits Florida and has forever. But to my knowledge, I can leave a few sort of big names, sprinkling of big names that have come from the West Coast to end up getting all the way to Lansing, but not many, like a real small number. And this number is obviously going to go up.
Yeah.
So let's also take a quick look at this particular season. So you said you'd be thrilled with 6 or 7 wins, which makes perfect sense because 6 or 7 wins are going to be a challenge, but not impossible. Not impossible. Some things go your way. You have a quarterback-friendly coach, and a talented, though mercurial, I think is the term I would like to use, quarterback. I do believe that if he can be developed, he's in a good situation to be developed.
Exactly.
So this game is going to be a battle, as you already talked about. Let's move on to the next game. So the next game is Prairie View A&M. Of course, I love HBCU football, but that should be a win.
Yep.
So let's walk through the rest of it. So now you face the riding high Boston College program that we all got to see, frankly, humiliate. I mean, that wasn't even super close towards the end. They were dominating Florida State towards the end. When you look at that game, tell me some of the things that maybe concern you or places where you think might be opportunities for Michigan State to maybe find a win.
Yeah, so it goes back to Aiden Childs, and I'm going to mention him a lot for good reason. At that point, I'd like him to be a lot more comfortable. Not necessarily in the offense, because he came from Oregon State with Jonathan Smith. So he, in terms of the playbook and the terminology, that's not what I mean. I mean playing Big Ten football, and even though Boston College is not a Big Ten team, I think what you saw in them was a little bit more speed than I thought. And I'm going to be honest, I think some of that was Florida State wasn't opportunistic. I'm trying to be nice.
You're being very nice.
Right. Sometimes you get beat and sometimes you lose. Mm-hmm. And what I want to see from Michigan State is if a team comes or you go there and they play better, I want to see you fight, stick around, even if you lose. I don't want to see you lose games. I don't mind watching my team get beat by a better team or even an equal team that played better on that day. The culture and the mentality has to be built. I want to see that we can run the football. We know who we are. I want to see a combination of running backs that, I mean, it begins and ends with Nate Carter still at the end of the day, but I want to be able to run the ball. So my shorter answer to your question is I want to see a team that can run, so which means the offensive line with the two additions are starting to establish themselves and we are starting to establish ourselves on offense as a running football team. K'Ron Lynch-Adams is a great compliment to Nate Carter. I hate thunder and lightning. We got to find something better than that. But they're different styles of backs. He came
Smash
over,
and dash has been one of the things that's become.
He came over from UMass where he rushed for over 1,000 yards, almost 1,200 yards, I believe, and double-digit touchdowns. He brings a big playability that complements Nate Carter, because Nate Carter is you need 5, he'll get you 7, right? I need to see Jack Velling establish himself as one of the best tight ends in football by this time. And I think the question is, what do I want to see in the Boston College game? Continuity is probably a short answer. I want to see growth at the quarterback position. I want to see us running the football. Win or lose, I want to see us imposing our will offensively. And on defense, tackle, right? Sometimes the other team will have skilled players, and Boston College. I'm not sure I know who Boston College is yet, though. But if we see the one that played Florida State, you got some challenges on the outside. So you got to tackle. So really offensively, because we go as Aiden Childs goes, I want to see maturity at the quarterback position. I want to see complementary football, both within the running back duo and in the offense. I'd like to see Jack Velling starting to show what he is and can be. And I think that some of the guys, Jerron Glover and some of the guys on the outside, the receiver, start to show who they are. So the real short answer is I want you to watch that game and go, oh, that's Michigan State. If there were no jerseys and no logos and no score, oh, that's Michigan State, because I know what Michigan State looks like. So by Boston College, that's what I want to see. I want to see, but it's not going to be the traditional Michigan State because Jonathan Smith brings something different. And as you called our quarterback, mercurial, right? We don't have Kirk Cousins, the banker, anymore. There's no Connor Cook, right? There's no Connor Cook. These guys, the statues that we normally have back there,
right? Yes.
This guy will tuck it and run. But if that's what the new Michigan State looks like, and now you're telling me I've got 3 running threats, because Carter will hit you, Lynch-Adams will go to the house, and now you got to worry about the quarterback. So I want to see them starting to establish who they are. That's what I really want to see by then.
If there's a surprise win on the schedule, a win that other people don't see coming for Michigan State, who do you think gets surprised? Who do you think Michigan State if they do spring an upset this year, who do you think gets that?
So you're my guy and all, and we're friends.
We are.
And we both live in the same state, in the same general area.
Yes.
But I bleed green and white. So my answer is November 16th over Illinois. That's the one I want. That's the one I think may happen. By then, we'll really know who we are. I think at Illinois would be a gut punch. And I don't love Brett Bielema. To be honest, I've never been a big Brett Bielema guy. There's a tough stretch in the middle, and we come out of that stretch and we go to Champaign. So for me, it'll be like, okay, well, Oregon, Michigan, those are tough. Ohio State, we knew, but we're here, we're coming, and the way you announce that is November 16th at Champaign. That's
luckily. It was just grad school and not undergrad, so it doesn't hurt me as badly for you to say that. And if it were Lovey still there, it would still cut me because I absolutely love Lovey Smith. But I too have. We'll talk more. But yeah, Brett Bielema is not at the top of my list of favorites either. When he came to one of my alma maters and immediately started trashing the previous program. Not the classiest way to handle it. I understand, there's things you don't like and whatever, but there's a way to handle that. And whatever. Yes. We'll talk more later. We'll go at Brett Bielema. If only Brock were here, because Brock really knows how to trash a coach. But that's for another time. Okay, so you mentioned Mr. Childs several times. Give me at least two other players you really think might go from being players that people don't really know about. You mentioned, maybe one of them also, who established themselves as linchpin players for the Spartans this year, sort of maybe lesser known players that changed the way they're thought of.
Yeah, I think people who watch offensive line play, and I know you do, everyone doesn't. The center position, in my mind, in college and pro, grossly underrated consistently, the importance of that position. So Tanner Miller is the name. And I don't know that you're going to hear his name a lot, but people who know football, people who understand football, when you and I are talking months from now about Michigan State's two-back tandem and how they're in the top part of the Big Ten and rushing the football, Tanner Miller will be critical to that. So he's huge. I think you may know Montori Foster, you may not. I don't know. He'll be the leading receiver most likely, even though he'll probably spend a lot of time in the slot. He catches the football. And you and I have had conversations about all of the job criteria for a wide receiver. And I think we've consistently agreed the number one thing is catch the football, right? Yes. Blocking is great. Knowing the route tree is awesome, right? But if all those things exist and you drop passes, it doesn't matter. Montori Foster catches the football. And I think tight end Jack Velling is going to be a star by the end of the year. I'm calling that one out now. You'll know his name for sure. You will know Jack Velling because he'll be a critical part of the Michigan State rotation, and he'll probably get some national. Cal Halliday, you should already know. So on the defensive side of the ball, that one's easy. I think that Ben Roberts, the D-back that we got over from Oregon, he will help. He will help. But Halliday is the name on defense, and probably Wayne Matthews because he just tackles. But the big in order. Non-Aiden Childs. I think Velling actually is my first choice. And Tanner Miller, the center, will get recognition on a national level. Those would be probably the top two. And Halliday he's a football player.
If it helps, I know that Jim Nagy at the Senior Bowl is also a fan of Mr. Miller. So he has a chance to show up. He has a chance to show up in Mobile. I'm interested. So this slides directly to my next question. Who do you think are the top three pro prospects on the current roster? Now, if it's someone who's still a year or two away, you could mention them, but are there any upperclassmen that you think have a decent chance of hearing their name called in the next draft?
I hope for Nate Carter he does, because I think he's a good kid and I think he's a heck of a player. That would be Halliday might just be too small, and he's you're the scout guy. There's some measurables, unfortunately, for that are going to hurt Cal Halliday. I think Tanner Miller for sure, right? We just talked about him. I think the guard that came up from Illinois, Andrew Dennis, might have some prospects. Yeah. Yep. I like him. Velling I've talked about, right? So I think Montori Foster could play on Sunday in some scheme, I think. And Yeah, again, I mentioned Wayne Matthews a lot. He's stepping up in class. He's stepping up in weight class. No disrespect to ODU, but he is. And Malik Spencer, I'll talk about that nickel.
There we go. Okay.
I'll talk about Malik Spencer at the nickel. Yeah. Those are some names I like. And now all these require guys to keep getting better, keep growing.
Right.
So those are the guys I think I like most in terms of particularly playing on a Sunday. If Cal Howday was 3 inches taller, and you could tell me what Cal Howday would need.
Well, it's first of all, if I'm the special teams coach, I'm in his ear, right. Because the ticket for him to have a long, successful NFL career is to become a guy who's on at least 4 special teams units.
Yeah.
And I think the way football is headed, they can find a role for him, at least in situations on defense. But I don't think he's an every down defender just because of some of the things you just mentioned.
He's too small.
But there should be there should be a place for certain people.
Right.
Like I look at certain defensive minds who would figure it out, but he wouldn't be for everybody.
Right.
He's a very specific kind of player, and so. But special teams is his ticket to being in the NFL for a while, maybe long enough for someone to say, "Oh, let's try you at nickel linebacker." Let's see how you do. That kind of thing.
But I think you're right. I think teams could be a future for him because he's just a football player. He's just got there's no coach in college football that wouldn't want a Cal Howday on his roster.
Correct. No matter what level of football, everybody's going to love a guy like him because he, as you say, makes plays. He figures it out. He gets people organized. He's a natural leader. All this stuff. And coaches, I tell people that coaches will take predictability over talent more often than you think. The guy that might know what you're going to do in a key situation.
Exactly. Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
Over the guy that I'm not sure I know what you're going to do.
Super talented, right?
We've seen it a few too many times.
Yep.
So that brings me to the next thing about a little bit about recruitment, and then we'll about 10 more minutes. We'll wrap this thing up. So we talked about opening up the West Coast. What else do you think is the key to holding your own? I think is the term I would use. I mean, you're going to win some recruiting battles. Obviously, Michigan State does win some recruiting battles, but there's reasons why you're not going to be in the top 5 or 10 or sometimes even 20 of the national rankings.
Right.
So for where you're going to be competing against that quote unquote second tier, which I'm not using as a disparagement, but simply in people's mindsets.
Yeah. And
also teams outside of your conference, but who are looking at similar types of players, 3-star players, the occasional 4-star. Tell me what is the secret, one, to building on that so that maybe you are occasionally also in the mix for some of those high 4 stars and maybe even occasional 5-star on occasion. And securing your gains so that these guys don't end up getting plucked off your campus after they have a great sophomore season, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think it starts with a culture, right? Establish your identity. Who are you? Who is Michigan State? Because then you can go tell a kid, and equally as importantly, you can tell his parents, we're going to develop your son, and he's going to be a better football player when he leaves Michigan State than when he got there. Because you and I know their recruiting tactics. And for some of these kids and their parents, it is, how are you going to get my son to the league? Right? So development. Send players to the league is first answer. And it's 5, 6, 7 options. I'm going to say the first one is start to develop professional football players because that appeals to a lot of recruits. And by the way, to your point, and I know you, so I know what you meant. There is no shame. There is no insult when you talk about a conference like the Big 10, the Big 18, and you say second tier. Because understand that first tier is uber elite. That first tier is 3, maybe 4 teams, and they're uber elite.
Right.
The second tier, 6, 7 teams, being at the top of that group is no small feat and it's nothing to be ashamed of. So I took no offense because I think that's who we are and that's what we should be targeting. So first, send players to the league because that's a big recruiting tool. Look at these guys who went to the league. Second, you got to beat those clowns up the road. And I use clowns, how I use them.
I know you mean.
Beat them because that recruiting thing is it's great if you can get some kids from Florida. And we have a good history with Florida in particular.
Yep.
But you got to get that kid from Ypsilanti to drive 80 miles, right? You got to get that kid from Flint. You got to get that kid from the city, from Detroit.
Right. Martin Luther King High School.
Martin Luther King, Pershing. You got to get that kid to choose us over them. And how do you do that? You beat them. And we had a 10-year stretch where we owned them. That changed. Yep. So at minimum, be competitive. So if you're putting kids in the league because you're developing them, that's a recruiting tool. Within the state of Michigan, beat those guys and you can recruit home. Because if you're not one of those 7 or 8 schools that recruits everywhere, if you're a tier 2 school, you got to recruit home. And are you going to get the 5? No, you got to get the 5-star kid from Lansing Everett. That's the kid. But you got to get a 4-star from Saginaw. You got to get a 4-star from Kalamazoo. And then you got to build your roster with solid 3 stars from Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, and you have to develop them. And they stay in year 4. That 3-star is a all Big Ten talent. And so you develop is the biggest word of that. Send kids to the league, beat those other dudes, recruit well within your home. And home is not just the state of Michigan because they kind of own the state. You're going to get to second tier. But we get a lot of kids from Ohio. We get kids from Illinois, Indiana. Recruit your area well. And and develop. So I think the coaching staff is big. And win games. At the end of the day, you win. Because it's all laid out. Everybody's on TV. Everybody gets games. But if you win some games and you somehow roll into the game with them next year with a solid record and game days on campus, that kind of stuff actually matters in 2024.
Yeah.
I won't talk NIL. I'm not going to say, steal signs. That's another way to do it. Couldn't help myself. Sorry. Send kids to the league, develop 3 stars into NFL players because there's a lot more, as you know, a lot more 3s and 4s than there are 5s.
Correct.
So you take a 3 and you send 3s to the league, you can sit in the living room and tell that parent, I know he's a 3, but I can get him he can get to the league in our system. And I think, winning always helps.
Yeah, but I agree with all those things. And you just mentioned, you're setting up perfectly. You mentioned the coaching staff. We've talked about the head coach. Give me at least one member of the coaching staff that you think is going to be incredibly important that maybe isn't as well known as Coach Smith, and maybe someone you could see as a future head coach, but somebody that is going to be, you mentioned developing kids, and that's assistant coaches, right? That's where that happens. Who's someone you think is a great teacher amongst the assistant coaching staff that's going to help that happen?
Yeah, and because a lot of the work we probably need done immedately lies on the defensive side of the ball, it would be easier to talk. It would be easy to talk the OC because of the importance of Aiden Child. So the OC is very important, obviously, but the defensive coordinator, and why did I just do a brain lock on his name? Oh, man. So I like our defense coordinator because I like the scheme he's bringing in, and his name will come back to me in a moment. I could just pull it up, but I don't like to do that. I'm challenging myself to pull it from my head. Our defense coordinator, I think, brings a type of scheme that will help guys get better. And that's really kind of what it needs to look like, getting better. I talked earlier when you asked me about, hey, what do you want to see? It's still guys getting better. So I want the defense to be better. I want the defense to look better. And I apologize to his parents because I forgot his name. But our new defense coordinator, I like very much. Lost it. Yeah. So the defense coordinator, Brian Lindgren. Sorry, got him. OC. Brian Lindgren is going to develop Aiden Childs. So if Brian Lindgren develops Aiden Childs and Aiden Childs become a pro prospect, Nate Carter goes to the league, Miller and Dennis, and you send 5-6 offensive players to the league, that is how an OC gets a job. So I think the defensive coordinator needs to build, but the OC has talent. Montori Foster's a talent. Jack Velling's a talent. Aiden Childs, Nate Carter, I mentioned a bunch of names. There's talent on the offensive side of the ball. And if Brian Lindgren gets those guys to the league, that's how your name comes up as a coordinator for jobs. Now, will he, what job will that be? It might be a job at a MAC school or something like that. But Lindgren's a guy who we think will bring, the biggest thing is blocking. We're going to block. Our O-line's going to be better. We're going to run better. and hopefully protect the quarterback better. And those are the most critical things. So Brian Lindgren is actually the OC who I was trying to think of, because you're also going to like the way he presents. You would love sitting 5 minutes with Brian Lindgren talking football. You're just like, wow, okay, that's the kind of guy on the coaching staff that I think you'll hear about him in the future.
And the name you're trying to pull is Joe Rossi.
Yes,
but aggressive,
yes.
very high energy, young-ish defense coordinator on the rise.
Inspiring. They're going to like him too. I like both coordinators actually, and I think that there's more talent on the offside of the ball right now. So I think Lindgren has a better chance to show more.
Okay. My final question is 3 years into the future. I love doing that because it gives a chance to either look like brilliant geniuses or utter fools. So take me 3 years down the road for this program. Where will Michigan State's program be in 3 years?
Yeah, we will be going to our third straight bowl game, which is important because I mentioned early in the show, the value of bowl game practices is grossly underrated. You get these extra practices that bowl teams don't get. I think it's the showcase that'll help you recruit. So third straight bowl game, ideally is something in very late December. And I think we have players on the roster that are all Big Ten caliber players. And you're looking at that fourth year as competing for a playoff spot, which in the Big Ten is fourth place finish, maybe, right? So we need to have a cycle where at minimum every third or fourth year we are competing for that third or fourth spot in the Big Ten. You got to upset those guys down the road. You got to go to Columbus somehow and steal one or Happy Valley. I know, I'm just saying, I have that confidence in Jonathan Smith that in 3 years we'll have a team capable. Oh, not in Columbus. Okay, beating them in East Lansing. How about that? We have a team capable of whether it's Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, or those other guys. And you notice I don't say their name. That's not a mistake, right? Stealing, you got to beat one of those guys. You got to steal those. You got to be capable of winning one of those games because those are the markers. So a team that's top 25. Capable on a good day where you play your good game of knocking off one of those big four. I'm going to call them the big four. I'm not prepared to put Wisconsin or anybody else in there, but so we're the big four in my opinion. You got to be 5 or 6 in the conference, and 5 or 6 in the conference will have you in a conversation about the playoff. I would love to say a playoff appearance. That would be fast, and if you utilize the transfer portal. If we embrace NIL a little bit more, maybe you could do that. But you said 3 years down the road. So 3 years down the road, simple. I need some landmark wins over Big Four teams. I need to be ascending. Third straight bowl game, something in late December. And I need us to kind of be that team just outside on the fringe of the 12. Talked about
that. Terrific, solid, well-reasoned answer. You robbed me of our of what was going to be our signature when we started repackaging and sending out the clips. You took us. We almost had the signature clip where you called for it within 3 years beating Ohio State and Columbus. Like, oh, Demetrius Vrges called for it.
That's it. He
like,
called
it. We got it. That's that. We're going to lead with that. We cut up the clips. That's the one we're going to lead with.
All right.
Somebody get somebody on the line. I agree with almost everything you said. And to me, recruitment, and you said growth, and like I said, the term I think I used was consolidating your gaze, right? Because the problem being a developmental program is what my great-grandmother used to call is fattening frogs for snakes, is that you end up developing players, and then Oklahoma's like, thank you very much.
Here you go. Absolutely. And that's a part of football in 24. But if you're smart and you can land, I mean, we've got some good transfers. I mean, we got some really good transfers. So everybody's got the same. It's different. They just poach. But I've used the word development 5 times for a reason. So we got to go grab a 3-star and develop him into a pro prospect. We've got to take a guy like Aiden Childs and Jonathan Smith has to continue to recruit the West Coast, no matter what. Convince some kid right in the San Fernando Valley that East Lansing, Michigan is a beautiful place, because it is.
It is.
So that's the work there. But when you get that kid on
all the
campus,
kids to visit between end of May and
early September.
Right, there you go. Right, there you
go. but more than anything, when you win games, because I think if you put that list of things that entice kids, right? Playing time probably. I don't know. You can tell me what you think. Coach prestige is a cool thing, but program success, in my opinion, is probably right behind playing time. A guy doesn't want to come and be the fifth man on your depth chart unless you're Alabama or Georgia, because he's still going to go to the pros. He knows that his time's going to come. But a school like Michigan State can't tell a kid you're fourth. That guy's going to go somewhere else where he can play. So my playing time, but coach prestige, which I think Jonathan Smith will build, team success. I think conference prestige helps. But I think that knowing how to recruit and what kids want, we can offer playing time. If you're good enough, you can get on the field in East Lansing. Yeah, because we got spots. We got spots. But I think recruiting really good 3-stars and some 4-stars and then turning them into NFL players should be the hallmark. If you can say that, you can go into a living room and say, I don't think he's one of the best 100 players in the country. It doesn't matter, because if he comes to Michigan State, he can still be in the league in 2 or 3 years. That's how you sell parents and kids. The kids that will go to Michigan State. There's a certain group of kids that, unless they were born in, Livingston County somewhere, might never even consider Michigan State. But the kids that will, and the kids that want to grow, and the kids that want to develop, you can get those kids 3s and 4s. We'll get the occasional 5. Like I said, there'll be a unique situation. Like I said, some guy locally whose dad or legacy guy, another kid named Snow comes up, he's ours, right? Something like that. One of those Bullas. One of those great linebackers.
Right, you get all the Bullas, yes.
We get all the Bullas. We'll get a Duckett, right? We'll get a Snow. Those guys will come, and I think that you keep doing the legacy work. Get your homegrown kids and develop. That's really what we have to be. We have to be a school where we have a bunch of redshirt juniors and seniors playing, and then that's where we can compete. But we're going to get that win in Columbus. I'm calling it. Go ahead and put it on there.
Okay. Excellent. Well, as always, we will have to have you back some point later in the season, maybe before that game against those other guys. But tell people where they can find what you do, where to follow you, and all that stuff, what you've got coming up.
Oh, absolutely. So I love green and white, but the main focus of my podcast work is in pro football. It's not even in pro football. It's Detroit Lions. So if you happen to be a fan of the Lions or you just find them interesting, the Cornbread and Kool-Aid podcast is where you can find it pretty much on any platform. Kool-Aid is Coolade, because the Kool-Aid people wouldn't give me the trademark. The Cornbread and Kool-Aid podcast, like I said, it's on pretty much any platform you can look for. It is Detroit Lion focused, and this would be a good year to start looking at that. You can find me most Wednesday nights on the Sports Crib, along with my good friend, the co-host of this very podcast. It's a good time, good group of guys. And you can find me on anything Bill Carroll asked me to do. Pretty much, that's where you find me. If Bill makes the call, I'm there.
Well, that is the greatest compliment I think I could ever be given. We will definitely be talking again, and we'll talk some pro football. So if you want to break down a game, Detroit versus, you tell me once again. You pick a week, and I'll make my way over to the Cornbread and Kool-Aid podcast.
Love it. I want you down in November for Houston. That's the one I want you.
Oh yes, that's
going to be at Houston, November 11th. Let's talk then.
I do. I'm a fan of that one. So I'll start breaking down tape now. Once again, everybody, thank you so much. Thank you for staying and being with us. We will have you on again in the future. And for those that enjoy, hopefully you do, what we do, like and subscribe. I've been told to say that more often. So I did it. Yeah. Hopefully that'll satisfy that requirement. But most importantly, this is my great joy, my great love. And I have my great friend Demetrius with me. For those of you that, like I said, have been with me through the beginning of this, we're going to do this. We're going to keep doing this. This is one of my favorite things to do. Thank you again. You're probably gonna all should be going to, pre-games are ending. Get ready to watch your games. Enjoy this week, and we will see you again in one more week. Take care, everyone. And once again, thank you, Demetrius.